February 19th, 1944. A cobbled street in Paris under the heavy fog of occupation. The city, once alive with music and the sounds of life, now felt like a shadow of itself, muted and suffocating. The Nazis had tightened their grip, the Gestapo watching every corner, every whisper, and the streets no longer felt like home. The city of light had dimmed. People moved in silence, eyes lowered, avoiding the glance of their neighbors, because a glance could be the difference between life and death. Among them, on this dreary morning, a man moves with a quiet determination. His name is Jean, but that is of little consequence to the world around him. To the occupiers, he is just another face in the crowd. Nothing special, nothing worth noticing. But to the ones who are listening, to the ones who are waiting for a spark, he is a messenger. And today, that simple bicycle he rides will carry the weight of history. The mission he is about to undertake seems small, insignificant even, an unremarkable act. His bicycle, with its weathered frame and rusty gears, is nothing more than a tool for transportation. The letters he carries are nothing more than scraps of paper, encrypted and cryptic, like a secret only a few can understand. But to the men and women fighting the German war machine from the shadows, these letters hold the key to a new kind of war. A war not fought with tanks or bombs, but with information. Jean adjusts his coat, pulling it tighter against the cold. His breath forms clouds in the air, but there is no time to feel the chill. His mind races through the importance of his task. He knows the risks. He knows the Germans have spies everywhere, that any moment someone could recognize him for what he is, a courier, a lifeline to the resistance. They would take the letters from him, and he would be gone. But the mission must be done. There is no other way. He pushes off from the curb, the bicycle's tires squeaking against the pavement as he navigates the winding streets. The city has changed, and so has he. No longer a simple man living his life. He has become part of something greater, something that exists in the shadows, an underground war being waged in the dark corners of Paris. There are no medals for his work, no recognition for his sacrifice. His reward will come in the form of victory, or not at all. But in the coldest part of his soul, he knows that his contribution, no matter how small, could tip the balance. The first checkpoint is a narrow alley, barely wide enough for a single person to walk through. He slows as he approaches, his senses sharp, his eyes darting to the shadows. The city has eyes, and those eyes watch him closely. Jean's heart beats faster, his mind alert to every sound. The footsteps behind him. Were they following him? He glances over his shoulder, but there's no one there. Only the wind pushing the litter down the alley, and the distant hum of life continuing, oblivious to the quiet war being waged on its streets. At the end of the alley, there is a door. It's unmarked like so many others in the city, but Jean knows what lies behind it. He pushes the door open, stepping into the dimly lit room. A man stands waiting inside, arms crossed, his eyes scanning Jean's face for any sign of betrayal. The man nods, and without a word, Jean hands over the envelope. The letters inside are more than just ink on paper. They contain vital information, plans, locations, and intelligence gathered by the resistance. They are the lifeblood of an underground movement that has refused to surrender, that has continued to fight, despite the overwhelming odds against them. They are the letters that will fuel the rebellion, that will give the Allies the edge they need to strike back at the heart of the Nazi regime. Jean doesn't know what's inside them. He doesn't need to. He only needs to get them to the next person, to keep the chain intact, to make sure that the war in the shadows continues to burn. The man in the room takes the envelope, carefully tucking it into his coat. Jean watches him for a moment, his eyes narrowing. There's a silent understanding between them. The man doesn't ask questions. He doesn't need to. Jean knows that once the envelope is passed, it will disappear into the night, carried by someone else who will continue the journey. Jean leaves the room as quietly as he entered, his breath coming in shallow gasps as he mounts his bicycle once more. The fog is thicker now, wrapping the city in a shroud of uncertainty. His next checkpoint is further away, deeper into the heart of Paris. He knows the risks increase with every pedal he makes, but there's no turning back. The letters must reach their destination. As Jean rides, he begins to think about the city that he has known all his life, the city that now feels like a ghost of itself. Paris, once vibrant and full of life, now trapped in the grip of fear. But there are still those like him, those who refuse to bow, those who fight with whatever means they have. It's not about being a hero. It's about doing what's right, about standing up when the world tells you to kneel. The second checkpoint is a familiar one. A cafe, the kind of place where life still goes on as if everything were normal, even though nothing is. Jean dismounts, walking his bicycle up to the door. He pauses for a moment, his hand on the handle, before stepping inside. The air is thick with smoke, the murmur of voices low. A few heads turn, but no one acknowledges him directly. The resistance doesn't speak in words. They speak in gestures, in looks, in the simple exchange of objects. Jean spots the figure he's looking for, a man sitting in the corner, scribbling something on a napkin. He approaches, sliding the envelope across the table with a subtle motion. The man doesn't speak, but his eyes flicker with recognition. He takes the envelope, slipping it into his jacket without hesitation. Another link in the chain, another step closer to victory. Jean nods once, silently turning to leave. As he exits, the door swings shut behind him with a soft click. For a brief moment, he feels a sense of relief. The letters are one step closer to their destination. But his work is far from over. He still has one more checkpoint to pass. And with each one, the danger grows. The city is more oppressive now, the weight of the occupation pressing down on everything. The checkpoints are closer together, the patrols more frequent. Jean feels the tension in the air, a sense that something is about to break. He wonders, as he rides through the twisting streets, if this is the last time he will ever see Paris. The thought lingers, but he brushes it aside. There is no time for doubt. As he approaches the final checkpoint, he sees the soldiers up ahead, their boots echoing against the pavement. His heart quickens, his grip on the handlebars tightening. He knows he must be careful. One misstep, one wrong move, and everything will be over. The soldiers glance in his direction, their eyes flicking over him, but they don't stop him. He's just another man on a bicycle, riding through the streets of a city at war. But as he passes the checkpoint, something shifts inside him. He knows he is on the edge of something monumental. The letters he carries are more than just pieces of paper. They're the threads that connect people, that bind them together in a common cause. They're the spark that will ignite the resistance, the fire that will burn down the walls of tyranny. Jean rides on, the weight of the letters still heavy in his bag. The city continues to move around him, but in his mind, he knows that everything has changed. One man, one bicycle, and a few letters have the power to shift the course of history. The paradox of it all, how something so small, so seemingly insignificant, can become the catalyst for a revolution. As Jean disappears into the mist of Paris, the sound of his bicycle fades into the background, swallowed by the noise of city at war. But in the silence that follows, his journey remains, quiet, unnoticed, but eternally significant. March 7th, 1944. A hidden cellar beneath a German-controlled village, the smell of damp earth heavy in the air. The flickering light of a single, guttering candle casts long shadows against the stone walls. The room is small, cramped even, with barely enough space for the 5 figures huddled in the corner. The distant rumble of artillery can be heard, far off in the hills, but in this cellar, the war feels closer. Here, there are no grand strategies, no generals barking orders, only ordinary people struggling against the extraordinary weight of history. The man at the center of the room is thin, his face pale from weeks of hiding in the cold, his eyes red from lack of sleep. His name is Pierre, and though he's only 25, the stress of his role has aged him beyond his years. He's part of an underground network, one of many like it, scattered across Europe, that's fighting the Nazis, not with guns or tanks, but with intelligence. In his hand, Pierre holds a small bundle of letters, each one packed with critical information. The letters are written in a a code so intricate and precise that even the most seasoned cryptographers would struggle to crack it. The words inside carry the weight of the future. The Allies' next move, the location of a German stronghold, a shift in the enemy's plans. It's more than just information. It's the hope of a world still holding its breath, waiting for freedom. Pierre looks around at the others in the room. There's Lucy, a young woman whose quiet determination is betrayed by the scar on her cheek, a remnant from the time when the Germans came through and tore apart her village. Then there's Henri, a former schoolteacher whose gentle demeanor hides a sharp mind and an even sharper resolve. The last person is Jean, an older man who once worked as a mechanic in a Parisian garage. His hands are calloused and rough, his eyes weary from the constant fear that comes with living a life in hiding. They are not soldiers, not spies in the traditional sense. They are civilians, bound together by a shared purpose and an unwavering belief that something must be done. Henri clears his throat, breaking the heavy silence. The courier is on his way, he says quietly, his voice laced with anxiety. We need to make sure he gets through. The words hang in the air. There's no time to waste. The courier, the man who will carry the letters to the next safe house, has already taken his first steps. But in this war, every movement, every action is fraught with danger. The Gestapo has spies everywhere. The Germans have eyes on every street, every corner. There's no such thing as a safe passage anymore. The resistance members may have built an intricate network of safe houses and couriers, but one slip-up, one moment of carelessness, could undo everything. The letters could be lost. The message could die. Jean stands up, his knees creaking, and moves to the back of the room where the others can't see him. He pulls a map from his jacket, spreads it out across the table, and starts to trace the path the courier will take. His finger runs across the road from this village to the next. A narrow, winding path through a dense forest, a series of abandoned barns, and finally, the house of a trusted contact. Henri joins him, and together they plan the route, marking out potential danger spots, areas where the Germans might have a presence. The patrols near the forest are thickening, Henri mutters. There's a chance they'll be out today. We'll need to make sure the courier moves quickly. Lucy stands up, the tension visible in her movements. I'll go to the forest. Make sure they don't see him. She's the youngest of them, barely 18, but she has the instincts of someone who has lived with constant danger for far too long. It's the look in her eyes, the way she never hesitates. That marks her as someone willing to do whatever it takes. I can stay hidden. I know the terrain better than anyone. Pierre nods, handing the letters to Jean. Make sure they get to the next house, he says, his voice steady but weary. This is it. This is what we've been waiting for. The minutes that follow are a blur of action. Jean quickly grabs a bundle of supplies. Clothing to change the courier's appearance, food for the journey, a few hidden weapons just in case. Henri heads for the exit, checking the watch that has become their lifeline, a silent signal that keeps them all in sync. Lucy leaves first, slipping into the night, her footsteps muffled by the thick snow that has fallen outside. There's no time for words, no time for anything other than the next step, the next movement. The courier has no idea what awaits him, of course. He's just a man, another link in a chain of men and women, all working together to ensure that the war is won, one secret at a time. But he has been trained for this, just as Jean and the others have been trained. Every move is calculated, every step measured. He is part of a greater whole, a greater cause, and he knows that if he fails, the cost will be devastating. The night stretches on, cold and unforgiving. The forest looms ahead, the tall trees standing like sentinels, watching over the land. The courier, now dressed in simple peasant clothes to avoid suspicion, moves swiftly through the underbrush, his heart racing. His breath comes in short bursts, his body taut with the strain of the mission. The sound of twigs snapping beneath his boots is the only thing that breaks the silence. He's almost to the clearing when he hears the voices. Low at first, barely audible. The sound of soldiers patrolling the area. He freezes, pressing his back against a tree, his hand tightening around the bundle of letters in his coat. The letters are everything. Without them, the resistance will falter. Without them, the plans for the next Allied strike will be lost, and the German forces will remain unchallenged, unbroken. His heart pounds in his chest, a steady thrum that echoes in his ears. The voices grow louder. The patrol is getting closer. The courier doesn't move, doesn't dare to make a sound. His eyes flicker to the path ahead, looking for an escape, but the forest seems endless, a maze of shadows and trees. He could try to double back, but that would be just as dangerous. He could hide, wait for the soldiers to pass, but the minutes are slipping away. And then, just as it seems that all hope is lost, a figure steps out of the darkness. Lucy. She appears like a shadow, a ghost moving through the night, her face determined, her eyes sharp. She gestures silently, pointing to a narrow gap between two trees where the patrol won't see him. He takes the signal, nodding quickly, and begins to move again, more cautiously now. Lucy stays behind, just out of sight, watching the soldiers as they march past. She holds her breath, her body tense, knowing that any second could be the end of everything. But she is silent, a part of the night, waiting for the perfect moment to make her move. She's not afraid, not of the soldiers, not of the danger. In a way, the danger is her constant companion, the only thing that keeps her sharp, keeps her alive. As the patrol passes, the courier slips through the gap in the trees, unseen, unnoticed. Lucy stays hidden for a moment longer, watching the soldiers disappear into the shadows. When she's sure the coast is clear, she moves quietly, like a whisper in the wind. The courier is safe for now, but the journey is far from over. The letters are still in his possession, still carrying the hopes of a nation. The path ahead is fraught with danger, but is the only path they have. The resistance, the hidden fighters who wage this war in silence, will not stop. They cannot stop. The courier continues on, his every step a testament to the courage of those who have given everything to bring him here. He doesn't know it yet, but he is part of something larger than himself, part of a movement that will shape the future of the world. And in that, there is power, a power that no army, no enemy can ever truly destroy. July 22nd, 1944. The French countryside, distant and quiet, except for the occasional rumble of artillery far in the background. The once vibrant fields, teeming with life and the sounds of nature, now lay still, as though they too were holding their breath, waiting for the storm to pass. The world feels suspended in time, as if it's on the edge of something monumental. And it is, though no one can truly grasp the depth of the moment. Victory is within reach. The war is nearing its end. But the human cost, the price of all that has been sacrificed, remains shrouded in silence. In a small farmhouse, nestled between two hills, the letters, the ones that have traveled through the streets of Paris, across the forests and villages, passed from hand to hand, from courier to courier, are finally about to reach their destination. Inside, Jean, the same man who had carried the letters through the dangerous streets of Paris months earlier, now find himself sitting across from a man he once knew only by name, a stranger now whose life has become intertwined with his own. The farmhouse is a temporary refuge, a final checkpoint in this long journey. But even here, the feeling of uncertainty lingers.